good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's Miss Rachel from William Jean's Library, and we're going to have Rainbow Reads this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I have some really special books picked out for tonight. If you have not joined us before for Rainbow Reads, I'm just going to read some fantastic books to you. It's not like a story time where we do songs and other things. It's just several books that I carefully choose to lift up the stories and lived experiences of LGBTQ plus families, whether any member of the family that is part of the LGBTQ plus community, whether it's child, parent, and share those stories, whether some of them are true stories, some of them are fiction stories, but it's really important for everyone to see themselves and their families in the pages of books, and to see other people and other families that are different than theirs in children's literature. And there are a lot of good books out there. So I've been really enjoying curating some good selections to share with you one Wednesday evening a month. So tonight I have the first book I'm going to read is an older one. It's from 2005, and it was really a groundbreaking book as far as children's literature goes, with telling stories about LGBTQ plus families. You might be familiar with it, but even if you've read it, maybe it's been a while, so it's a good time to revisit it. It's called And Tango Makes Three. It's a picture book, but it is based on a true story. So I'm going to read it tonight. It's by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell. It's illustrated by Henry Cole, and Tango Makes Three. It won the ASPCA Henry Children's Book Award. It features penguins, and like I said, it's a true story, but it's also a very well-loved and well-respected book, especially for the time that it was published, when it was one of the very first children's books. It's been banned a lot. It's received a lot of backlash, and it has still survived, and many, many more books featuring LGBTQ plus families have followed. So again, I want to repeat that this is a true story. And in case I didn't say this already, I'm going to read it with permission from the publisher, Simon & Schuster. And now I'll stop talking and I'll actually read the book. And Tango Makes Three. And before I start reading, I'll say hi to my friend Josie. Hello. I'm glad you're here. In the middle of New York City, there is a great big park called Central Park. Children love to play there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Every day, families of all kinds go to visit the animals that live there. But children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda bear families with mothers and fathers and furry red panda bear cubs. There are monkey dads and monkey moms raising noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton-top tamarin families too. Maybe you've seen some of these different animals if you've been to a zoo. I know the Elmwood Park Zoo has some of those animals. So does the Philadelphia Zoo. And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. Every year, at the very same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girls. When the right girl and the right boy find each other, they become a couple. two penguins in the penguin house were a little bit different. One was named Roy, and the other was named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other and walked together. They sang to each other and swam together. Wherever Roy went, Silo went too. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsay, noticed, wait, did I say that right? Mr. Gramsay noticed the two penguins and thought to himself, they must be in love. Roy and Silo watched how the other penguins made a home. So they built a nest of stones for themselves. Every night, Roy and Silo slept there together, just like the other penguin couples. And every morning, Roy and Silo woke up together. But one day, Roy and Silo saw that the other couples could do something they could not. The mama penguin would lay an egg. She and the papa penguin would take turns keeping the egg warm until finally it would hatch. And then there would be a baby penguin. Roy and Silo had no egg to sit on and keep warm. They had no baby chick to feed and cuddle and love. Their nest was nice, but it was a little empty. One day, Roy found something that looked like what the other penguins were hatching, and he brought it to their nest. It was only a rock, but Silo carefully sat on it and sat and sat. When Silo got sleepy, he slept, and when Silo was done sleeping and sitting, he swam, and Roy sat. Day after day, Silo and Roy sat on the rock. But nothing happened. Then Mr. Gramsay got an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it to Roy and Silo's nest. Roy and Silo knew just what to do. They moved the egg to the center of their nest. Every day they turned it so each side stayed warm. Some days Roy sat while Silo went for food. Other days it was Silo's turn to take care of their egg. They sat in the morning and they sat at night. They sat through lunchtime and swim time and supper. They sat at the beginning of the month and they sat at the end of the month, and they sat all of the days in between. Until one day they heard a sound coming from inside their egg. Beep, 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 it said. Roy and Silo called back. Squawk, squawk. Beep, beep, answered the egg. Suddenly, a tiny hole appeared in the egg's shell, and then, crack! Out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now Roy and Silo were fathers. We'll call her Tango, Mr. Gramsay decided, because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies. Soon, Tango grew, strong enough to leave the nest. Roy and Silo took her for a swim just like all the other penguin families. And all the children who came to the zoo could see Tango and her two fathers playing in the penguin house with the other penguins. "Hooray, Roy! Hooray, Silo! Welcome, Tango!" they cheered. At night, the three penguins returned to their nest. There they snuggled together, and, like all the other penguins in the penguin house, and all the other animals in the zoo, and all the families in the big city around them, they went to sleep. I wonder if maybe you've heard that story before. Even if you haven't read the book, maybe you heard about Tango in the zoo. And it's a really special story because kids love stories about animals, and it's encouraging for them to see animal families can be different, just like human families can be different. Not all families have the same configuration. And there are lots of good books that show that. The last book I'm going to read also has a great family story. But the next one I'm going to read is a newer one. It's called It Feels Good to Be Yourself. And you probably know that intrinsically without having to read a book to tell you that it feels good to be yourself. But this book helps give people encouragement about how to be themselves and to feel good about it. It is a book about gender identity written by Teresa Thorne and illustrated by Noah Grigney. It feels good to be yourself. No matter what your gender identity is, you are okay exactly the way you are, and you are loved. And I'm going to read this with permission from the publisher, Henry Holt and Company. It feels good to be yourself. This is Ruthie. It's kind of hard to see. This is her right here, Ruthie. This is Ruthie. She is a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy, until she grew a little older, old enough to tell everyone that she's actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. This is Ruthie's brother, Xavier. Xavier is a cisgender boy. That means when Xavier was born, everyone thought he was a boy, and as he grew older, it turned out everyone was right. He is a boy. Boy is Xavier's gender identity. There are so many different ways to be a boy or a girl, too many to fit in a book. But not everyone feels like either a boy or a girl. Look at all the different people on this page. Kids and grown-ups, families, so many different kinds of people. Non-binary is a helpful word that can describe a kid or a grown-up who doesn't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. This is Ruthie's friend Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought Alex was a girl. But Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. This is Alex's friend JJ. JJ is neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, they never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Alex and JJ are both non-binary. Just like there are many different ways to be a boy or a girl, there are many different ways to be non-binary. Too many to fit in a book. Some kids don't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. They feel like neither. Some kids feel that their gender identity isn't always the same. It's often changing. And even with all these possible ways to be, Some kids don't feel any of the words they know fit them exactly right. There are a never-ending number of ways to be yourself in the world. Whether you feel like a boy, a girl, both, or neither, or if you describe yourself another way, that is your gender identity. Your gender identity might match what people thought you were when you were born, or it might not. See, when you were born, you couldn't tell people who you were or how you felt. They looked at you and made a guess. Maybe they got it right. Maybe they got it wrong. What a baby's body looks like when they're born can be a clue to what the baby's gender will be, but not always. When people guess wrong, it's okay to let them know. Ruthie was 5 when she told her parents, "I know you think I'm a boy, but really, I feel like a girl." Whoops! Ruthie was a girl all along. They just didn't know it at first. When people guess right, it's also okay to let them know. Xavier was 3.5 when he told his family, "I'm a boy! I like being a boy." You might feel like a boy. You might feel like a girl. You might feel like both boy and girl, or like neither. You might feel like your gender changes from day to day or from year to year. You might feel that none of these words describes you perfectly. You might not be sure yet. Maybe you're still figuring it out. Your feelings about your gender are real. Listen to your heart. No matter what your gender identity is, you are okay, exactly the way you are, and you are loved. Feels good to be yourself, doesn't it? This is a great book. If you'd like to borrow it from the library. The illustrations are gorgeous, and you could read it more slowly and look at them more than I gave you time to do. And it has some great definitions in the back and some ways to talk about pronouns, and some other helpful resources are in that one as well. Feels good to be yourself. The last book that I'm going to read for you tonight is called The Flower Girl Wore Celery. It does not mean she wore vegetables. Celery can be a word to describe the color of celery, which is kind of like a light green, like that. So we're going to read this one tonight. It's by Merrill G. Gordon, and it's illustrated by Holly Clifton Brown. I'm going to read it to you with permission from the publisher, Carr Ben Publishing. And this is another great, happy family story. The Flower Girl Wore Celery. Emma's dad called her into the kitchen. "Phone call for you, Emma." It was Emma's grown-up cousin, Hannah. "Alex and I are getting married this summer. Will you be the flower girl at our wedding, Emma?" Emma loved Hannah, so she said, "Okay." Then she thought for a moment. "But, Hannah, what is a flower girl?" She imagined herself dressed as a flower. Hannah laughed. "A flower girl walks down the wedding aisle and scatters flowers on the floor, and she wears a fancy party dress. Can you do that?" Emma said, "Yes." "You'll be great, Emma. Thanks." The next day, Emma's father said, "There will be a ring bearer named Jacob at the wedding. He'll carry the wedding rings." Emma thought for a moment. She imagined a gigantic bear holding rings in its paws. Is he very big? She asked. No, her father laughed. Jacob is your age and just your size. Maybe you'll dance together at the wedding. Emma loved to dance. She closed her eyes and imagined dancing with a bear just her size. A week later, Emma's mother said, the bridesmaids will wear celery dresses. You too. Here's the color. She held up a square of light green satin. Will the ring bearer wear celery too? Emma asked. No, said her mother. He'll wear a black tuxedo. Emma imagined herself in a light green dress decorated with stalks of celery, dancing with a little bear just her size, dressed in a tuxedo. She imagined her cousin Hannah in a beautiful white wedding dress, dancing with who? She didn't remember Alex. Summer arrived. Emma's flower girl dress came in the mail. Emma watched as her mother unpacked the light green dress. Emma's eyes opened wide. But where is the celery? She demanded. What celery? Her mother asked. You said the dress would be celery. Where's the celery? Emma began to cry. Don't cry, Emma, said her mother. I didn't know you expected the dress to have celery on it. Celery is the name of this light green color. Oh, whispered Emma. I don't like celery anyway. I like it better this way. On the day of the wedding, Emma put on her celery dress and went to the synagogue with her family. Hannah's mother, Aunt Judy, ran to greet them. My, Emma, you look beautiful, exclaimed Aunt Judy. Come and meet Jacob. Emma's heart beat faster. She was going to see the ring bearer now. Aunt Judy took Emma's hand and brought her over to a little boy, just her size, dressed in a tuxedo. Emma, this is Jacob. Jacob, this is Emma. You two will walk down the aisle together. Emma's eyes opened wide. You, she said, are not a bear. You're just a boy. And you, said Jacob, are not a flower. You're just a girl. Aunt Judy laughed and laughed. Oh, Emma, she said, hugging her. Jacob is a ring bearer, not a bear, because he bears the rings. That means he carries them. And Jacob, she said, hugging Jacob, a flower girl is a little girl who carries a basket of flowers. She's not a real flower. Emma and Jacob both looked at the floor and scuffed their fancy shoes. Look, said Aunt Judy, here comes Hannah. Emma ran to her cousin Hannah, who was wearing a wonderful white dress that sparkled in the light. How's my favorite little cousin? Asked Hannah, picking Emma up and swinging her around. Just then another young woman came over. Her dress was white too, and Emma thought it was as pretty as Hannah's. Emma, do you remember Alex? Asked Hannah. Emma's eyes opened wide. She did not remember Alex. And I would just like to say that this is very confusing to me, these pictures, because these dresses, to me, do not look white. It describes them as white, but they look kind of green or blue, similar to Emma's dress. But they're lovely, no matter what color they are. I'm so happy to see you again, Emma, said Alex, who did look very happy. Does this mean there are 2 brides? Emma asked. Yes, said Hannah. We're going to have a wonderful wedding, especially with you helping. See you inside. Hannah and Alex clasped hands and hurried away. Emma thought for a moment. No celery, no bear, and 2 brides. Nothing was what she had imagined. Jacob came over to stand next to her. "I'm glad you're not a flower. I was afraid I would have to water you if you got thirsty." Emma giggled. Emma's mother rushed over. "It's time to start. Here's your flower basket, Emma." Emma looked inside the basket. It was filled with rose petals. "As you walk down the aisle, just drop some petals as you go, okay?" Emma nodded and smiled. This was exactly what she had imagined. Emma and the rest of the wedding party waited behind a door. Hannah and Alex's grandparents walked down the aisle. Alex's brothers walked down the aisle. The bridesmaids in celery-colored dresses walked down the aisle. Finally, it was Emma's and Jacob's turn. Jacob carried 2 rings pinned on a pillow. Emma carried her flower basket and dropped rose petals down the aisle. Emma sat with her parents and watched Hannah and Alex walk down the aisle with their parents. Hannah and Alex stood under the wedding canopy. The rabbi read the ketubah and sang 7 wedding blessings. Then Hannah and Alex took the rings from Jacob's pillow. Hannah put a ring on Alex's finger. Alex put a ring on Hannah's finger. The rabbi put 2 wine glasses on the floor. Hannah and Alex looked at each other and then stomped on the glasses at the exact same time. "Mazel tov!" shouted all the guests as the glasses broke and the musicians began to play. The 2 brides smiled and kissed. Then they danced up the aisle. Hannah grabbed Emma's hand and Alex took Jacob's hand, and they all danced into the party room together. The wedding guests clapped and cheered. It was time to celebrate. Hannah danced with Alex. Aunt Judy danced with Grandpa. Emma's parents danced with each other. Emma danced with Jacob. The wedding guests lifted the 2 happy brides in chairs, and everybody danced the hora around them, singing and clapping. At home that night, Emma's father asked, "Did you have fun?" Emma thought about her celery-colored dress, and Jacob who wasn't a bear, and the 2 brides with their beautiful dresses and happy smiles. "Yes," she said, "this was a very good wedding." "Maybe someday you'll have a wedding," her mother said, "and maybe Hannah and Alex will have a little girl to be your flower girl, or maybe a little boy to be my ring bearer," said Emma. Thank you once again, my friends, for joining me tonight for Rainbow Reads. Any of the books that I read during Rainbow Reads, you can request through our online catalog and check them out to borrow them and read them at home if you'd like. And there are many more if you would like to request any others as we read through a variety of different stories month to month. And I just appreciate you spending time with me to hear stories about all different kinds of families, all different kinds of people, and learning how many different ways there are to be a family, to be a couple, to be a boy or a girl, or to be a non-binary person. And I am thankful for all of you, and hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to have Rainbow Rooms together in person. But for now, I'm happy to be able to connect with you like this. Have a good night.